Daria has given us an outline of the essential ingredients that seem to make alternative schools very successful in the public sector. One of our graduate students is doing a research project on exactly that. Joanne Carr from Abington Heights, an excellent school in its own right, will be taking a look at that issue for us and hopefully publishing a paper on that topic. So our very first presenter is an individual who knows this very, very well. She is the founding teacher of the School for Applied Individual Learning, which was the first public alternative school in the state of Florida. SAIL, S-A-I-L, School for Applied Individual Learning, is in Tallahassee, Florida, and she's been the principal there since 1978. She and her staff and her school have won a variety of awards over the years. For example, Phi Delta Kappa has identified SAIL as one of the top 20 alternative schools in the nation. But probably the primary indication of their success is they have approximately 250 students and about that many again on a waiting list. So we have with us this morning Roseann Wood.
Good morning. Let's see if this works. This work too? All right. Be mobile here. Well, it's very nice to be here. And I just left sunny Florida to come up and be with you on Saturday morning, and I really want to thank you all. I know you're a dedicated group to come out on Saturday morning. My little girl, I have a 7-year-old daughter. I was leaving home, and I was really worried about her because I don't leave home very often. And I said, you know, I'm going to really miss you, but I'll be back. And she said, Mom, get with it. You just got to go and talk to these people. Tell them about your school. I said, okay. So I called home. She's out spending the night with one of her friends, and she's kind of forgotten I'm even around. So I'm okay. I feel all right being here. And I'll tell you a story. A little bit louder? Okay. Daria called me a couple of months ago. I didn't know who this person was, but she called me, and at first I thought she was a solicitor, you know, and I almost hung up. She said, no, wait, I want to talk to you about a conference. Oh, okay. And so I said, sure, I'll do it. And about a week ago, when I really started trying to get ready for this, I was moaning to my staff a little bit in the office. What in the world am I going to talk about for an hour and a half to people that have come out on Saturday morning? Their expectations are going to be very high. And so I was sort of groaning, and we sat down at lunch. We usually have lunch in my office. It's like the secretary, the registrar, the assistant principal, the counselor. After all the kids have eaten, we make sure they haven't killed each other or anything during lunch. We have the student aides take over the office, answer the phones, and we go in my office and sit around the table and eat our lunch. And you know, a nosebleed comes in here and there, and the copier gets jammed, so we don't really sit and have a leisurely lunch, but we usually talk about the school and sometimes our lives. So I had just gone to the doctor for my bus driver's physical. Now, some of you principals out there may not know this, but principals also occasionally drive buses if you want to take kids on field trips. So every year I go and get my bus driver physical and take my renewal course so I can be certified as a bus driver. And so I went to the doctor and had this done. And one of my former students named Preston, actually all I could think of was Turtle, because that's what we called him when he went to SAIL, but his name is Preston. And I'm walking out, getting in my car, and he runs out of the doctor's office. He says, Roseann, I have to tell you something. I'm like, oh God, I've got a tumor. I know, the doctor sent him out here to talk to me and bring me back in. He said, no. I just have to tell you that you probably don't realize this because I was kind of a goof-off student. I was like, yeah. He said, you know, SAIL changed my life. So now that I knew I didn't have a tumor, I was like more attuned to what he was going to say. And I said, really? He said, yeah, I know I didn't do really well. I was kind of, my life was mixed up, and I was doing other things, drugs. And he didn't actually graduate. So sometimes when kids leave and they don't graduate, you think, well, you've been a failure, and you feel badly that it didn't work out for that student. But he said, oh, no. He said, I wasn't ready to be in school right then. I had other priorities, but Jeb Booth, who was his art teacher, changed my life. I said, really? You know, even back then when I couldn't see it, she could see my spirit. Dari mentioned spirit. And something she said or did, or one of the other teachers, it just turned me around, and it took me a while to get there. And now I'm working in the doctor's office, and I got my GED, and I'm putting myself through college. He said, but if I hadn't gone to SAIL at the time that I went, I wouldn't be doing all this. So, now I know why I'm a bus driver. I had to come get this physical and hear this story. And so I'm relating this to the folks in my office, just, like we always do. And Shirley, the registrar, said, that's it. I said, what's it? She said, that's what you can talk to them about at a conference. You can tell them stories about kids. I said, well, that's not a bad idea. So I said, y'all finish your lunch. And I turned around in my chair, and I got on the computer. And all of our students and teachers and a lot of our parents are hooked up to email. So I quickly typed out this email and said, hey guys, I'm going to Pennsylvania next week, and I need some stories. So would you please take a minute and tell me your story, and I'll share some of them with the folks up there. And within the next day, I just started getting all these emails, especially from parents. We have probably about 75 parents who have email addresses. And they had and kids and teachers. Teachers didn't send us many, they don't have time. But the kids had time and the teachers have time. So I'm going to sort of sprinkle some stories. I got about 100 of them. I'm only going to share about 15. So I'll sort of sprinkle them through as I talk, because what I'd really like to have done is just brought them up here to talk to you personally. So I'm going to relay their stories and try to help you understand what my school's about. One thing I want to say before I do that is, although we do this in a small school, and I do think the size of our school is important, if you're a superintendent, how many superintendents are here? Okay. If you're a superintendent and it turns out that you can't manage a school of 250, later on in our question and answer time, I'd like to talk about how you can do some of the things we're doing in a large school by dividing up the school. So just keep that in mind if you think, oh, well, they're doing that because they're a small school. And it's true. Some of that is true. But there are also some of the things we do, I think, that apply to all schools. So let me read you a few. First, I'll start with Jesse. Since this is going to be taped, I won't give their last names. He's from Pennsylvania, so I thought I should start with him. SAIL is a very wonderful school. Its impact on its students is far-reaching. I don't see what the purpose of having a conference in Pennsylvania is, though, since a lot of towns there, such as State College and Harrisburg, have alternative programs far superior to our own. Well, I'm not going there. But he said, anyway, SAIL is a great place, though. If it weren't for SAIL, I would not have attended high school and instead would have gotten my GED. The staff and students are all much more open-minded about people's views. Here's one from Marlene. This is my first and last year at SAIL. I can honestly say I really like being here. The atmosphere is much more laid back than at regular high schools. The last thing a teenager wants is a drill sergeant as a teacher. The small size of the school also helps to add to the atmosphere. I went to blank high school a year ago and was failing miserably. I'm now an AB student, and I owe it all to SAIL, the school's understanding that teens are unique people, not drones. When other people ask what to do to make high schools a better place, tell them to start treating the kids like friends and to be aware of their special needs. Going to school isn't such a bad thing when you know that when you're there, you'll be appreciated. All right, this is from Sarah. Since I've been at SAIL, my life has turned around completely, for the better, that is. Before I came here, I didn't care about anything. I was extremely shy and didn't have many friends. Since I've been here, I love life, care about school. Oh, no, I missed a line. I was extremely shy and didn't have many friends. Since I've been, oh, that's what I said. Okay, about school. I have many friends now. I even make speeches a lot. Something really big has happened. I quit doing drugs. Now, those are the kind every principal wants to hear. I wish I had about 1,000 of them. I quit doing drugs, I quit smoking cigarettes, smoking pot, drinking, etc. The best part is that I made this decision for myself. If I wasn't going to SAIL, I would have never quit all that. I would probably have a real hatred for life. I think that every school should be like Sale. Here, I know that the teachers actually care. I also really like that we have a voice here. Sale really is probably one of the best things that has and will happen to me. These stories okay? I like stories. When I first came to Sale, I was really behind. This is from Adam. I could hardly read or write. I remember my first day in Miss Lottie's English class. The kids call us by our first name, by the way, but he just couldn't bear to do that, so he called her Miss Lottie. We were having to get to know each other day, and we had to ask our partner a list of questions that she was telling us to write down and to read out loud to the class. I asked her if I could talk to her a minute. You see, I couldn't do it because I could hardly read or write. She told me to do my best and not to worry about it, and then I told her there's no way I could do it. And she said, "Don't worry, I will help you out with it." And she gave me a typed list of the questions and told my partner to help me out. I thought that was real nice of her. She could just have let me embarrass myself, but she didn't. I thank Sal a whole lot because they accepted me when I was so far behind in everything and let me stay and helped me to improve to be where I needed to be. Okay, here's the last one I'll read for a minute. This is from a parent. I am Drew's dad. We all know Drew. Although Drew tested gifted in 4th grade, he struggled all through middle school and had an awful time keeping up at blank school. Try not to name these schools. It's not their fault. We tried the study skills program here in Tallahassee. Peer counseling, we had him tested for ADD. He did test positive, I believe it. So we put him on Ritalin for a while, but nothing seemed to be able to turn him around in school. He has always been a joy as a child, with behavior never a problem. He just couldn't seem to make it in school. When the opportunity came to enroll him at Sale, we reluctantly withdrew him from blank school and enrolled him at Sale. I say reluctantly because of the unknown. We had heard mixed reviews of Sale and were a little cautious. When he was enrolled, we immediately set up a teacher-parent conference. My wife and I wanted to see that he got off on the right foot. Teacher-parent conferences in the past had consisted of all the teachers more or less telling Drew to get his act together, and Drew sinking down into his chair in embarrassment, and then nothing changing. Y'all ever been to a parent conference like that? As the Sale teacher-parent conference began, my wife and I knew something was different. The teachers were warm and encouraging, complimenting Drew on the good things he was doing in their classes and sharing with him and us things he needed to do to improve his performance in their particular class. We sat there trying to hold back tears of joy. I won't tell you that Drew has become a straight A student, but he has had the best 2 semesters of his high school career at Sale. His cumulative they said GAP, but I think they meant GPA, is 1.0, but this 9 weeks so far his average is 2.67. Drew is a quiet, shy kid who finds it difficult to ask questions in class. He literally got lost in the shuffle at a huge high school. The teachers at Sale have been very accessible to us and very encouraging to Drew. Drew's mom and I are really thankful for the people at Sale. See, I just had to do my brag piece right up front, and I wanted y'all to hear those stories because we get those all the time, especially kids that have graduated and they come back by and they troop their kids behind them or whoever they've got with them, and they want us to know that they did become somebody just like we told them that they would, and they stop by to sort of show off a little bit, especially they've in college, or they usually don't come by, I've noticed, until they've really kind of got something going, because they want to prove us right. And it's a wonderful experience, and I'm sure some of you educators have that experience. You go to the mall, you go to the grocery store, and even the kids who, in some cases we kicked out. Hi, Roseann, how you doing? They're following it because they know I really loved them, even if they weren't quite ready to be in school. We had that relationship, and it lasts forever. It's really, really cool. I thought I would start by telling you a little bit about me and how I came to have the same job for 23 years. Daria said it's stable around here, so that might be that might be something familiar to you all, but in Florida, where everybody is moving all the time, it's sort of like a, I don't know, demeaning professional admission to say you've had the same job for 23 years. But, you know, if you find something good, sometimes you just got to keep it. And so, but here's how that sort of happened. I grew up in a little town called Belle Glade, Florida. Now, this is right on the edge of the Everglades. And if any of you are old enough here to remember Edward R. Murrow's Harvest of Shame, anybody remember that documentary that went on about conditions for workers in the fields? That's where I grew up. And it was a town of haves and have-nots, basically. The haves had a good time in school, and I had a good time in school. I made straight A's. I was in all the clubs. I loved school. And then there were a lot of have-nots that kind of just disappeared. They were in school with us, you know, in elementary school and maybe middle school, but, you know, our class started getting smaller. And I realized, you know, later on that they were all going out to either work in the fields or move, and they didn't have it so good. So I know that experience shaped me into a radical. You know, if you grow up and you see that kind of disparity, there's something that clicks that this isn't right. Something's wrong here. So I went to FSU, home of the Seminoles, which I don't give a rip about, but we are the home of the Seminoles. And I majored in psychology, and you know, I was going to be a psychologist, and I got interested in how people learn. And I did some work. We had this it's called a free school in Tallahassee, and it's been there about 30 years. This guy went over to England and studied with A.S. Neal, who some of you may know, and wrote the book Summerhill. And he founded a school based on the Summerhill model, which is very unstructured, and kids kind of play all day and do what they want, and they have classes when they want, and they learn to read when they want, and it's a very interesting school. And so I did my honors work there and studied it, and I thought, well, gosh, I wonder if some of these concepts could be brought to public school. Like, you know, the love of learning, fun, things, you know, radical ideas like that. And I finished my degree, and I decided, you know, I want to do something. I don't want to go to school anymore. So I said, I'm going to get a job. I'm going to try to get a job. And teachers were making a really big salary for me in those days, $7,200 a year. I was like, wow, I could really have some money here. I'm going to, you know, try to get a teaching job. Well, I had no teaching degree because I was too good for the College of Education. I was going to be a psychologist. And I wish I had gone to a good College of Education because I wouldn't have had such a tough first year. But anyway, they hired me as what they called the Safe School Director. Now, Florida has this program. I didn't really know about it at the time. They just said, do you want to be the Safe School Director? You can work with some kids who are having problems. I said, oh, sure, I'd love to do that. And I started meeting with them, and you know, they were skipping classes and doing drugs, and like a lot of them couldn't read. And then the ones that could read really well, like the gifted ones that were called socially maladjusted. That was the term they used then for kids who sort of didn't fit in. They were called socially maladjusted. And I started, you know, forming little classes and taking them on field trips. And I went out to some of the kids' homes, the ones who couldn't read, and they lived literally on a plantation. I mean, there were still plantations on the outskirts of Tallahassee, and their parents' job was to grow the corn and everything so that people could go quail hunting. And that's where they grew up, and it turned out they all lived, you know, about 1 mile within each other. This whole group of kids that were at this big, traditional, the best high school in Tallahassee. And what I really finally figured out is the safe school job really meant that I was supposed to keep the school safe from my kids. That was really my job. So what ended up happening, since they would really only come to my little classes, is the principal said, well, why don't you just keep them for the whole day? Okay, I'll try, you know. So I had them for the whole day, and it was in one portable building. And I had the socially maladjusted kids and the kids who couldn't read. And you know, I was playing records, and we were trying to learn how to read with the record, and it was all real experimental, and the principal didn't care just as long as I kept him out of his hair. And so that's what we did for a year. And I thought about this morning. There was this guy from Philadelphia that came down to Tallahassee. His name was Mark Levin. I don't know if anybody knows him. Is that a familiar name? He ran, he ran this teacher training program, and I started meeting all these interesting people from other schools, and like a real progressive school board member and some other people, and we had weekend workshops. We were sort of crazy like you guys. We came out on weekends to learn more about education. And there was a group of people in our group that were trying to start an alternative school. And they did that year while I was at Leon High School, I'll say the name, struggling, trying to do something with these kids. And so once they got the school started, it was called then the Alternative Learning Center, and it was like a dropout recovery program at the time. I started sending my kids over there, one at a time. I said, you really need to go somewhere else, and because it was clear to me that no matter what I did at that school, those kids really needed a totally different environment. I mean, they were going to drown as soon as they left me, and that's not a healthy situation. And I knew that just for them, a big school environment was never going to work. And so I would talk to their parents, and I think your child ought to try this. So one by one, the kids went over there, and they were really happy. And so at the end of the year, I said, I think I need to go over there too. This is sort of like more like my kind of place. They were not only allowed to be experimental, but they were encouraged to be experimental, and that's what I wanted to do. So I left and took all my socially maladjusted children with me. And I sometimes like to say that, if everybody had to wear a size 7 shoe in this room, there would be a lot of socially maladjusted people sitting here. Because we all just, have different things that we need, and that's why I really believe that school systems have to have lots of alternatives, not just one, because the alternative that we formed was good for a lot of kids, but it wasn't good for every kid. And, I think the trick here is to come up with all kinds of ways that kids can succeed, because they all don't wear a size 7 shoe. And it's no wonder that when we try to get everybody to go through these large institutions, that some are going to fall out because it's not what they need. And our job, I really think, is to create lots of small spaces where kids can belong. I mean, that's what I'd say is my overall message of this whole talk. But I have an hour and a half to fill up, so I'll keep going. Let's see, where am I? I got there. Okay, well, anyway, I got sort of in on the ground level of this school. It was the end of the first year, and we became more of a school at that point. They were, had about maybe 30, 40 kids, but by the time I got there, we went up to 100. And there were about 5 or 6 teachers, and we would huddle every morning to figure out what the world we were going to do that day with the students, because there had been no planning time, no, teacher preparation. In fact, this was a abandoned school building that was, when desegregation happened in Florida, this was a formerly all-black school, and it was, abandoned, and all the blacks were sent to the Leon, to the white school, and so this school just sat empty. And so as a result, there was no furniture, no heat, no walls, not much of anything. That's why they let us have it. But, we didn't really care. We were still young, and we didn't have to have heat. So we wore sweaters, and we had bean bags. And in fact, my assistant principal, who was a math teacher at the time, I was a social studies teacher. I forgot to tell you, I taught social studies, art, reading, and family group. Those were my 4 subjects I was teaching. Family group was kind of like a counseling class. He said, in the early days, if you remember, I would take a different route every time I came to the school. And I was saying, I don't remember that. He said, I do. I was collecting furniture out of those, the people, how they leave furniture on the side of the road. He would just collect the furniture and put it in the back of his car so we would have, something to sit on. And that literally was the level of funding we had. But, like I said, we didn't care. We had kids, and we had an idea, and we had fun. A lot of it didn't look like real school to outsiders, though. Even though the kids were happy, it was real non-traditional. And we have elected superintendents in Tallahassee. How about here? Are you appointed or elected? Appointed? Okay, well, we're still in the election phase of development. And so the elected superintendent came in, a new superintendent, the one who had let the school start, moved on. And he didn't like the way this thing looked at all. This was not the way school looked to him, and he didn't think that, you know, kids should be calling teachers by their first names, and it just didn't look right to him. So basically, after we had been around about 3 years, by the way, John Holt visited the school when we were 18 months old. I heard Daria mention John Holt, so I'll bring him up. We had the fortune to sit around a table with him, and he said, you know, most alternative schools close after 18 months. And we were right at our 18th month when he talked to me. I'm like, really? He said, it's really hard to sustain this. You know, this is your rocky period. If you can make it through these 18 months, you have a chance. So that sort of gave us a boost to keep going. So we made it to 3 years. But the superintendent had had enough. And we had made the mistake of bringing in an outside evaluator who didn't do his job, and we got mad at him, and he got mad at us, and he blasted us, and so that was all the superintendent needed. So we had this school board meeting to decide the fate of the school. And they just had it scheduled for a room about half of this size. And so many people showed up at the doors, you know, like hundreds of people were, and the school board's going, what is going on here? They had to move the meeting. And so I literally said, okay, we're going to such and such school. Everybody had to get in their car and go to another place so they could hold all the people. People were very interested in this school, and the school board didn't realize it, I don't think, how much support. Because if you save a kid's life or save their education, you engender amazing support. I mean, people will go to the mat for you. And that's what happened. People felt so strongly, former students, every student who'd ever walked through the door felt so strongly about this because it was in the newspaper and everything. They showed up to say, don't close this school. And so we had a 5-member school board, and we knew we had 2 solid votes because one of the people on the board had actually helped start the school. And the 3rd vote was unknown. Well, it turned out that the oldest, most conservative member of the school board, his name was O.D. Roberts. I love that name, O.D. Roberts. We didn't expect him to vote for it. But 2 days before, his next door neighbor had gone over to visit him. And it just happened that we had the child of his next door neighbor, who was one of these kids that people call nerds. You know what a little nerd is? Everybody picked on him. He was a sort of a real brainy, but he didn't have any social skills. And he was, borderline suicidal. I mean, he quit going to school, and his parents brought him to our school, and, we treated him differently and gave him some self-esteem. And that parent went over to O.D. Roberts' house and said, you've got to keep that school open. Not just for my kid, but there's lots of kids out there that just don't really quite fit the mold of traditional school, and we need that school. And darn it if he didn't vote for us. So we got a 3-2 vote, and they gave us a 1-year extension. And they said, okay, superintendent, you've got 1 year to send your own person in there and evaluate the school, and we'll make a final decision. So he sent in a guy who was going to be the hatchet man. And at this time, the principal, who was a really terrific principal, a woman named Joel Dawson, said, after the whole fight was over and we got your probation, she said, I got to get out of here. She said, I've got an offer to go to Saudi Arabia. I need a break, and I'm gone. And so we're like, uh-oh. And the superintendent who, we had a good relationship. I treated him like my students with respect and courtesy. And for some reason, he asked me if I would be the acting principal for the year. I'm sure he thought it was only for the year. And I went back and asked the staff. I said, is this okay with you guys? And they said, yeah, you're okay with us. So I called him back and said, yes, I would take the job. Of course, I had no credential, you understand. I had just barely gotten my teacher certificate. It took me 3 years to get that. And, but, I don't think he cared. So he appointed me the principal, and he sent out Dr. DeVern Glenn. Now, he made a very big tactical error. Number 1, he didn't know that I had genetics on my side. See, my grandmother You didn't know this. My grandmother was a principal for 25 years. Her name was Rose, and she was a principal in Miami, Florida. And so, you know, I had it in my blood. I just didn't have it in my credentials, but I had it in my blood to do it. And Dr. Glenn, who is an elderly black gentleman, was a really terrific guy, and he knew quality when he saw it. And so, you know, of course I'm not prejudiced. So I'll just tell you, I won't give it away. Well, I will give it away. Here's the poem he wrote. This was the beginning of his evaluation, and then you'll know how the evaluation went. He wrote this poem, and in front of the superintendent, he read it to our faculty. And the name of it is "Too Good Not to Be True." I came to look. This was in 1977. I came to look you over and to get a picture of what you do. And now that it's done, I feel that you have won, because the picture I have of you is not simply wonderful, but it's just too good not to be true. I checked your schedule, visited your classes, talked to your students too. And from all that I have seen, you came out clean, because the picture I take with me is not simply wonderful, but it's too good not to be true. And now I leave much undone, and you're asked to follow through. I have no fear that should I return here, I will still see a picture which is not simply wonderful, but it will be too good not to be true. Yay, Dr. Glenn. So that was the beginning of his evaluation report, and I guess it's obvious that we stayed alive. The superintendent did not get reelected. He told me about 20 years later, he said, "Roseann, that was the dumbest thing I ever did." Because people were mad at him about it. And he lost the election. I don't know if it was just because of that, but some people thought that. Well, we've changed a lot since those days. We started at about 100, and we've grown to 250, which is still just a tiny little school, I understand. But we're lucky in a way that our building won't allow us to accept any more students. I already have 4 portables, and we don't have any more room for another portable, because there's a real tendency of my current superintendent to want us to be bigger. We have 300 kids on the waiting list, and there's a lot of kids who need the school. And what I have to keep coming back to is, if we get too big, then we won't be able to be the school that we are. And so the better solution that I'm promoting, and fortunately my direct supervisor is promoting, is that we form another school at another place and have a slightly different focus, so that more kids can enjoy it, but that we don't try to, make it big and lose what we have. All right, now I'm going to go to my multimedia technique here and do an overhead. These are the demographics of our school right now. We have 264 students. As you can see, it's about half and half male, female. Right now, our white population is 87%, black 10, other 1.9. This is the only statistic I'm not totally proud about that I'll talk about today. We need more black students in our school, and it's something I'm working on. And this has been, kind of a tradition over the years. But the truth is that we are real non-traditional, and what I have found is there's a stigma attached. When you go to a separate school, there's a stigma attached. Something must be wrong with you. And I think our black community is saying, hey, we need to make it in the conventional school. And it's more of a risky operation to send your child to an unknown, and I think that is the reason. But we do have a waiting list process that catapults our black applicants and other minority applicants to the top. And so this is going to be one of my missions in the next couple of years, is to change those statistics. But anyway, those are the statistics about at least color and sex. And these are the statistics about sort of who goes there. I went through our entrance packets before I came and sort of looked at what their profiles were as they entered. And let me move so you can see. 64% of them have poor academic performance. I think I had a story to go with this. Let me see if I can shuffle these papers and find my story. This is from Pat Patterson. I think that SAIL has helped me do better in school. Before I came here, I was failing out of school. The teachers explain things I don't understand in a way that makes sense to me. The staff here is open-minded to new ideas presented by the students. SAIL isn't for everybody, but if you enjoy smaller classes, individualized teaching, and being able to express your opinion without being criticized, you should come to SAIL. You see, we have kids who have been retained, kids with a high absentee rate. You can see our big one is emotional problems, negative attitude about school, and other documented needs. Now, I will confess to you that some of those other documented needs some of those kids could have done okay in traditional school, but they just hated it. It wasn't that they couldn't. It's just that they didn't want to. And we have an open door policy that anyone can come to the school. They don't have to be referred or sent by another school, and that's a real important part of our school. Daria talked about choice, and that was one of the things we always insisted on, that you don't have a school that you say, this is the school for this kind of kid. As soon as you do that, you label the kids, and the whole stigma thing becomes even worse. So we made a real concerted effort to not ever say that our school was for a certain kind of kids. It's open to all kids who want to learn in a different way. Small, individualized, applied kind of atmosphere. And I do everything I can to never describe our kids this way, but since we're in Pennsylvania, I'm going to do it. But I would never give this like to the newspaper, because then people adapt negative labels toward your students, and I don't want that. So, now this history of psychological problems is deep, and I'm talking bipolar, depressive, obsessive compulsive disorders. I think we have about 75 kids on medications. It's amazing how many teenagers are on antidepressants. It's really sad. Ritalin, a lot of, you see down here, got 11% of the students are diagnosed as ADD. In fact, let me read you an ADD kid. Where did Matt go? There he is. This kid, oh boy, does he bounce. When the counselor, I said, call his parents, see if you can get some insight. The counselor called the parents and the parents said, here's how I can sum up Matt in a nutshell. When he comes home, the cats run. Here's what Matt said. Well, SAIL is the best school I've ever been to. I got kicked out of 2 elementary schools, 3 middle schools, and 1 private school. SAIL is the only school I've gone to and not gotten kicked out of yet. No, we're trying to hang on to him. It's also the only school with positive graffiti on the bathroom wall, such as, SAIL kicks ass. This school has made it easier for me, mainly with my connections with the teachers. Most of them don't act like they are all much better than you, and they will talk with you like they would anyone else. It makes it easier for me to listen to them and actually care about what they say. This is from a parent. I was starting to talk about the history of psychological problems. She says, Roseann, I am Mariana's mother, and I would love to let you share her story. She was a new kid to Tallahassee and a freshman in a large high school. Well, she was new, no friends, in her first year in high school. She had previously been in gifted classes for all her school years previous to the move. Then she got confused and made some bad choices in friends as well as activities. But she met with counselors at school who did not seem to have the time to listen. She also had several teachers in this huge school who either tagged her as slow or just did not like her. She dresses quite differently. No one seemed, do y'all have kids like that here, Pennsylvania? That have pierced noses and orange hair. We have a lot of those, especially at SAIL. No one seemed to have the ability to listen, or they chose not to listen to her. She became quite depressed and in desperation tried to hurt herself. Because of a wonderful private counselor and others who truly knew how to listen to her and her cries for help, we were able to get her in an environment more suited to her. At SAIL, we found teachers who accepted her as she is. They actually cared enough to help her and guide her along. Before we realized that she was smiling and excited about going to school, something we had not seen for a long time. She really enjoyed each and every day, each class, and for the first half of last year, her grades were C's and D's and F's, and at the end of the school year, after the semester at SAIL, she had a 3.8 GPA. She was so excited. She called both my husband and I at work. She could not wait until we came home from work. Needless to say, we are both quite pleased with Sale, and she continues to do well. This semester, she is pulling A's, B's, and 1C. Roseann, I fully believe in Sale and its work. Everyone in this city, especially all teachers in other high schools, should visit your graduation. They will see the sense of community, of family there between the students and the faculty. It is quite special, and we are two very grateful parents for your vision. It's so nice to hear good things from parents. It's the one I like is when parents say, you know, my child is like talking to me again and looking at me in the eye, you know. And teenagers, when they get shut down, they start looking down. They quit. They sort of figure out a way to get you out of their face. And so that's the first thing that people notice is that kids start looking at adults in the eye and talking to them. And, you know, I don't know how exactly. It's just that when they're treated with respect, it sets such a different tone to the conversation that, you know, things just turn. It takes a while, but actually it's pretty fast, you want to know the truth. So meanwhile, you've been reading this. We have some medically fragile kids, 13% learning disability. That's a pretty high percentage in a school to have that many learning disabled kids. Quite a few that are gifted LD, which is a real interesting combination. This group at the bottom, private schools, homeschooled kids, 17% from alternative schools. Remember I talked about Grassroots, the free school that I visited when I was in college. Those are more like private alternative schools. The kids want to learn. Their parents are really into alternative education. And I must say they bring a real fresh air to the school, and I'm so happy they're there because you need role models in schools, especially if you're working with at-risk kids. You need kids who see the light and love learning, and these kids have been in schools where they didn't have bad experiences, and so they really bring an uplift to the school, and I really don't believe in having a school with all kids of one, especially problem kids. You've got to have a mix. You've got to have role models. Okay, so I've done my overhead visual, and now I'm going to do a video visual. We made this video about 3 or 4 years ago to show people who didn't know about the school. So this will take you to Tallahassee for a few minutes to my campus, and I hope you enjoy it. Daria's trying to tell me something. Oh, turn this off. You may have to cut the lights too because I noticed that before. It's about 5 minutes. Mm-hmm. Media break. I hope that gave you kind of a flavor of what I've been talking about. A few things that the video didn't mention, it's, like I said, it's a few years old. We're on a block schedule. The folks in Pennsylvania do block schedules. We're not on 4x4, which is really, I think, a preferred block schedule, but we have so that our kids can go in and out of the other high schools, we're on a 7-period block schedule. And that means that one period a day is 50 minutes, and then they meet their other classes every other day. We call it an even and odd schedule. So kids go to 2nd, 4th, and 6th on one day, and 1st, 3rd, and 7th, and then they all go to 5th every day. So that the kids like that, and a lot of the testimonials I got talk about the block schedule, giving them more time to learn, and they like that. We decided a few years ago that we really needed a place for our more motivated students to get what you would call an honors curriculum. And so we decided to do, within our school, a self-selecting honors curriculum. And that meant any student who wanted to be in it could apply, because a lot of times honors courses are just, depends on if the teacher before you recommended you, and some kids who should be in honors actually never get there. So we said anybody in the school can go that want to, and they will be perhaps challenged a little bit more. It's going to be more of a college preparatory angle. And I think that's, quite frankly, helped us attract a lot of other students who might not have gone to the school otherwise, because they know they can go through a college preparatory curriculum and get what they need to go into college. We have about, at this point, last year, 69% of our kids going on to college, which is way up from what it used to be. And we've made a lot of efforts in that area, because it's nice for kids to be happy in high school, but they need to figure out what they're going to do after they leave high school. And so we've shifted our attention somewhat over the years from more of an immediate, come to school and, make sure you've had your meals and all that, to really look at our academic program. So we have this self-selecting honors program. They're mixed in with the other kids all the rest of the day, but for their English, math, science, and social studies, they have honors classes. We mentioned that, I mentioned the academic programs, but the thing that the kids, love a lot are their electives. And so as the students have evidenced interest in what our kids have tended to like are art, drama, guitar, video, computers, Tai Chi, which is a PE credit. We have just adapted the curriculum to what the students want. And so it's always changing. And of course it depends on what our staff can do, because most of them that are certified in their academic area also have interests and hobbies. And we're allowed to let those teachers teach the elective courses. So if you're going to have an alternative school with a restricted group of staff, then you have to have some flexibility in what they can teach. So, if they're good at drama, then one of our teachers teaches drama on the side and like that. And we also have been able to bring in some what we call non-certified experts. We had a guy that played on the Chicago Bulls, and he didn't finish his degree. Great guy, worked with handicapped kids in another school system. And I said, I've got to get this guy on my staff. I don't care if he doesn't have a degree. And so I was allowed to hire him as a non-certified instructional expert to come and teach basketball. And there's nobody more qualified than him to teach basketball, believe me. And he also runs our in-school discipline program, and everybody loves him. And so having the flexibility to have some non-certified people who are experts to come in and do one or two things that are their specialty is a real nice way to broaden what you can offer in the curriculum. So we've always done that, brought in people with art specialties or music specialties. We have, since we are sort of in a traditional mode of English, social studies, science, math as separate classes, which I don't necessarily agree with philosophically, but the way the Carnegie units are set up and the way colleges are set up, we kind of get stuck in that mold. What we do is once every 6 weeks or so have theme days, and the students will come up with the themes that they want to study, and we will disband regular classes and have guest speakers in from the community to talk about things they're interested in. Suicide prevention, preventing drug addiction. This year we had a handicapped student in a wheelchair that came, and the kids decided they wanted to have Handicap Awareness Day, so that was been our theme, one of our theme days this year. And all the students, either put on blindfolds or, couldn't use their hand. Everybody got a scenario, and then they went through school for the day. that way. And it was a really enriching theme day, and people learned more than we could have ever told them about ADA. They found out what it was like, and I think developed some empathy for that student and for other handicapped folks. So we try to do things like that that are outside the curriculum and bring the whole school together on it. I can't remember if they mentioned intensives. Did someone mention intensives on the film? Once a year we have a week and we suspend the curriculum completely and everybody does something intensely for a week. I'm taking a group of kids whitewater rafting up North Carolina this year. We have a teacher taking some kids sailing in the Bahamas. Some kids are staying home and going to tutor at an elementary school. Some kids are going to do computer programming. Other kids are going to go rock climbing in North Carolina. Everybody does something, and the kids love it. They really look forward to it, and it gives all of us kind of a chance to break out of our roles. It's hard, but I'm very committed to it, and the teachers are, so we just do it. We have lots of field trips. I told you I'm a bus driver. We take kids to art galleries, art shows, community speakers. Any chance we can get them out in the community, we believe in that a lot. We have what we call, I'd say, an alternative discipline system. We have paybacks. The kids came up with that name. If they break a rule, they have to sit in isolated lunch for the lunch period. They hate to give up their lunch. You know, that's the most sacred part of the school day. Then we have Saturday school, and we have behavior contracts, all sorts of little things we've developed over the years to work with kids who act out and have discipline problems, because we have those too. We have managed to have a real low suspension rate. I'm going to talk about some of our statistics in a minute. And that's because we really work on mediation instead of suspension. Suspension is my last thing that I'll do. If I just feel like we've done everything we can, the kid has to be suspended, we will. But we do a lot of, if we sort of hear someone's upset with another person, we just drag them into the office and sit down and make them sit across the table and talk to each other. And we avoid a lot of problems that way. We also can tailor-make the curriculum in a small school. Everybody doesn't have to do the same thing. A young African-American woman walked up to me as I was leaving. And I said, Andrea, what are you going to do next year? Because I'd kind of lost track of her. She started taking dual enrollment courses. Can y'all do that in Pennsylvania? Students go to high school and college at the same time? The state supports that. And she said, well, you know, by the end of this year, I'm going to have my AA degree. Really? She's just so determined. She's been going to college in summer and during the year, and she is going to, she said, I've already been accepted at Cornell. I said, really? And so she's been accepted at Cornell, and she's going to enter as a junior as an engineering student. And so I'm like, right on, girl. And she's just sort of done this because she was determined to do it, and we had the flexibility to allow her to do that and to have an alternative schedule. We had a kid last year, Eric Smith, who had been at a private school, gifted LD kid, a computer whiz, a math whiz, very shy, shut down, didn't have any friends. His mom brought him there. And he really, you know, he always had this math skills, and he did fine with that. But he made friends and, you know, got into bicycling and, like, became, you know, a more balanced person. And he's at MIT now, and he's designing computer robots. And I can't wait to see what he does. He you know, credits Sale for allowing him to get creative with his smarts, and that was neat. He ran a video producing company when he was a senior, and we gave him credit for it. And so somebody in town needed to produce a video because he knew how to do all those animation techniques, you know, like they do in the movies. We'd say, well, you ought to go talk to Eric and contract with him. And so he was making quite a bit of money by the time he left for MIT. Okay, so I have a few overheads here, and just to show you for you data files what we've been able to accomplish in our statistics. Like I mentioned to you, I think we have a real low dropout rate. That Sale over here at the last year was 2.5% of our students, and this is the district and the state average. This is the average for alternative schools in the state, the tall one. So we've been able to really accomplish a lot, particularly compared to other alternative schools in the state. Can y'all see? And the dropout rate. I mentioned we have a low suspension rate. And you can just see how it compares to the statewide data and then the district and Sale. I have a very low suspension rate because I don't believe in suspension. And think this is, when the school was founded in 1975, the graduating class consisted of one student, and the graduation ceremony could be completed during a TV commercial break. Last year's class had 62 graduates and represented about 26% of our enrollment. We had about 700, 800 people in the audience, and we actually televised it, and we had to keep it down to 2.5 hours. We televised it because one of our kids who had cystic fibrosis got sick the day of graduation, and we were all just devastated about it. So we called the local TV station and said, you know, he has got to be part of graduation. So darn if they didn't bring the TV cameras down, and they broadcast it on local TV. The school system helped us out, and his whole family was in his bedroom with him, and they got to be at graduation. And it was a very moving event for everybody, and he's one of the ones that emailed me the other day. I didn't bring his email, but just thanking us for the level and the effort that we went to make him feel part of the school, even though he really could only come to school a couple days a week. We didn't care. We emailed him, and he got finished. He graduated. Let's see. In Florida, we have a thing called the HSCT, which is a test that you have to take to graduate. Now, that's impressive, isn't it? We have really worked hard on our test scores, because, you know, schools are judged by test scores, and there's a thing, you know, if you can't, what is it, if you can't beat them, join them. I have to hurry, don't I, Daria? Yep. Yep, I am. Last year, now of course that scale's pretty big, but 86% of our kids passed the math portion, and the district average was 76%, and the state average was slightly higher. And in communications, we were at 84%. The district was at 70-something. So we've done real well on test scores. And I was about to say, you know, if you can't beat them, join them. Well, we decided if you have to join them, beat them. There's no reason why our kids can't do well on tests. Now, our teachers can't stand tests. I mean, it's the last thing they want to do is focus on tests. But hey, that's the name of the game. Got to do it. So we have some special efforts, some special things that we do to help kids get prepared for tests. A lot of it is just telling them they can do it and showing them how to do it very specifically. And they do great. So for you guys who want some proof, there it is. Also on a national level, the SAT scores, I was sort of surprised to see this. We are outscoring the state and the district on our average SAT scores too. And I looked at it, and it was the same percentage of our seniors that are taking it as they are statewide. So I don't think it's a skewed piece of data. All right, so I've lost my notes. Where am I? I know I'm about running. Oh, see, I could fill an hour and a half after all. And I haven't told you about, I've got 8 stories up here I'm just holding because I don't have time to tell you. I guess I will end, since I want to have a little bit of moment for questions, and I'll just go over these things that I've talked about. Daria had a list of 15 or 20. I sort of was trying to get a Rosie's top 10, but I came up with 15. And they're a lot like her list, actually. All young people can succeed given an appropriate environment. Again, I want to mention, I certainly don't think SAIL is the only appropriate environment for kids. We've got to have lots of options for students. Keep trying. You find one that works. Focus on students' strengths and interests and build on them. We always start with the kids what they're bad in. You shouldn't even talk about that for a while. You should just go right for what they're good in and what they like, and get them feeling self-confident. And then start working on those math skills, reading skills, whatever it is they're behind on, because they already know what they're bad in. You got to tell them what they're good in. Be nice. My number 1 rule, be nice. That's the thing that they love. Like, people are friendly. They're treated with respect. We have a lot of different kinds of kids. Oh, let me find this one. It's so funny. Let's see if I can find that. I have so many stories to tell you. I am now attending SAIL School in Tallahassee, Florida. SAIL creates a tight-knit community of students and staff with a learning environment like none I've ever seen. I personally am in my 3rd high school in 3 years. I finally feel comfortable. The school's diverse student body is one of the unique things about this school. I mean, where else can you put skaters and preps and red